What makes a flag a good one, and what makes one bad? And is it even legitimate to ask these questions? I'm not going to be talking about which flags are the prettiest or the coolest. Taste in flags is like taste in most things. You like a flag or you don't. I agree with you or I don't. That's largely a matter of taste. What I'll be looking at instead is which work the best as flags, which do best what flags are supposed to do, which don't, and why. There are principles that can justify our saying that one flag is better than another. Some of these principles come from tradition or from general principles of design. The most important, though, come from the nature of flags. What are flags meant to do? How do they do this? And what designs help or hinder that? When you're judging a flag, then, you need to look at it as a flag, not simply as a design. A flag may be defined as a pattern made of cloth which symbolizes a person or a corporate entity such as a country, although individuals and groups such as religions may have flags too. In this video, I'll be looking at national flags. A particular example may be made of materials other than cloth, but its primary form is as a piece or pieces of fabric. Originally, flags were used to identify troops in battle and still identify the country of origin of ships. A flag's elements usually have symbolic values. Many of the rules for determining whether a flag is a good one or a bad one will come from this definition and description of use. Let's go through some of them. First, a flag has to be distinctive. This arises from its primary function of identification. It has to stand for the thing it stands for and nothing else. An easy way to judge how distinctive a flag is to turn it into a line drawing. It's easy to identify the flag of Barbados as a line drawing, but the French, Belgian, Irish, Italian, and other flags become the same. At one end of distinction, or rather lack of it, are the flags of Monaco and Indonesia, which have, through the vagaries of time, ended up identical. The flags of the Netherlands and Luxembourg are almost identical, differing only in their proportions and the exact shade of blue. In the middle of the range of distinctions lie the tricolors, which would be indistinguishable as line drawings, but quite distinguishable otherwise. A lot of countries have highly distinctive flags. Those of the United Kingdom, Zambia, and Kiribati are good examples. The most distinctive national flag is that of Nepal, which is the only non-rectangular national flag. Second, a flag has to be distinguishable. That is, it should be easy to tell at a glance what it is, whether it is hung on a pole behind a speaker or flying 30 feet up in the air. You want to be able to identify a flag from a distance, quickly and easily. There should be instant identification. This is the secret of the success of tricolors. This requirement overlaps with the one of distinctiveness. It is difficult for a non-distinctive flag to be easily distinguishable and vice versa. The best way to create a distinguishable flag is to make it simple. A simple flag can be recognized at a glance. A good example is Seychelles, which is both distinctive and easily distinguishable. A good way to see how simple a flag is to ask whether a 5-year-old child would be able to draw it. The drawing doesn't have to be perfect, just recognizable. For instance, a drawing of an American flag might have the wrong number of stars or stripes, but you could still tell what it was the flag of. On the other hand, the carpet section of the flag of Turkmenistan is very pretty, but it's not something that can be easily drawn. Simplicity can go beyond just swaths of color. The Scandinavian flags are simple, as is the Israeli flag. Because a flag is designed to move in the wind, it should be capable, by its design, of being in motion. It shouldn't be static. By static, I don't mean simply an undivided field charged with something. The flag of Kyrgyzstan, for instance, is just red with a sun whose center is a stylized yurt, but it's a beautiful and effective flag. The colors are bold, the yurt is culturally meaningful, and if you look closely at the yurt, it's been depicted so that its crossbars are off-center and bent, so that even though it might first be seen as static, it is unbalanced enough to give the design life. By static, then, I mean a design that is so balanced that it's completely just as it is, with no relationship to the environment in which it is flown. It just sits there. A dynamic design moves even when it's still. It's alive. Compare the flag of Albania with that of Kazakhstan. The eagle on the Kazakhstan flag is flying. It's active. It's in motion. The Albanian eagle, on the other hand, is spread out flat, as if it's a butterfly in a collection with a pin in it. A flag that at first seems static but isn't is South Korea. The yin-yang in the center is turning, and the trigrams, while balanced, change as they march around its edge. This is a flag that moves. A flag has to be able to be made from cloth. This is easiest if it can be sewn together rather than being printed. This means that flags with very complicated designs, such as that of Belize, aren't the best. It also means that unusual colors that are difficult or expensive to make in cloth, such as metals, aren't good. Something that people seem to forget when designing flags is that they are two-sided. The design needs to make sense from both sides. Writing violates this principle. A motto is a fine thing to have on a one-sided element, but put it on a flag and you have a side with backwards writing. The Saudi flag, which is composed primarily of writing, avoids this by being two pieces of cloth sewn together so that each side has the words printed correctly. However, this means it's expensive to make and twice as heavy, so it takes a strong wind to make it wave. Writing also breaks the rule against being complicated. A flag with writing is difficult to make, and the writing can't be recognized from a distance. Worst of all, however, is that writing violates the basic principle of a flag, which is to serve as a symbol, not as a label. The worst violators of this rule are some American states. If the flag is good enough, why include the name of the thing it stands for? A similar violation is a map. The country ends up backward on one side of the flag, and it shows rather than symbolizes. Because flags are meant to be flown, their design is not intended so much to be sewn as a patch or painted on the side of a plane as flying in the wind. This means that static designs which would be good for badges aren't good for flags. Take the Vietnamese flag, for instance. It's bold and simple with good colors, but it's flat and static. It's hard to imagine it flapping in the breeze. One sort of design that is good in this way is horizontal stripes. They curl and bend, enhancing the flag's motion. Thin stripes are better at this. The sort of cross found on the Scandinavian and Georgian flags do the same with the horizontal crossbars. Zambia has a unique and interesting way of emphasizing motion. Instead of the canton being in the usual place in the upper left, there's one in the lower right. This puts a focal point in the part of the flag that moves the most, drawing the eye to it, and thus the motion. Flag design isn't just about physical form. All the elements of a flag should have meaning. This is rarely, however, a problem. Even if colors don't originally have meanings, they are often provided with them after the fact. For instance, some say that the white stripes of the US flag stand for peace, but they actually have their origin in the flags being a modification of the British red ensign. Even that has a meaning, though, one of historical connection. In fact, historical meaning is better than a made-up one. For instance, the colors of the Greek flag have been said to stand for a lot of different things, such as the white clouds and waves and the blue sky and sea. But it's much better to simply say that they've been associated with Greece for a very long time, making them part of what it means to be Greek rather than imposing an artificial meaning on them. Trying to express meaning can lead to bad design, though. The most common fault here is trying to include too many meanings. Thus, on the Grenada flag, there are 6 stars, one for each of the country's 6 parishes, plus one more for the capital and a nutmeg for one of the country's main crops. Each of the colors also has a meaning. This sort of thing can be a result of how some national flags are chosen. Often they come from a committee where there can be a tendency to compromise by putting in everything committee members come up with. There's also the natural desire to express as much about a country as possible. If you ever get to design a flag, resist the urge and decide what the most important things to include are in the simplest way you can express them. Flag design overlaps with heraldry. Both flags and coats of arms have their origin in war. Both can be used to identify either groups or individuals. The overlap in personal banners used to mark property or troops of a noble. This survives most strongly in the use of the Queen of England's flag, which is flown only over home in which she is currently residing. If I may be forgiven a digression, one of my pet peeves is the incorrect use of the Royal Banner of Scotland. Many Americans of Scottish descent use this, or a shield of it, to show pride in their ancestry. It is properly, however, the flag of the monarch of Scotland and should only be flown by them. Since the kingdoms of Scotland and Ireland are currently united, this is the flag of Queen Elizabeth, and may properly be flown by her alone. If you want to display pride in your Scottish heritage, you should use the Cross of St. Andrew, which is a national flag, not a personal one. Now let's return to the subject of flags and heraldry. Because of their shared origin and shared purpose, they share design principles. This isn't a video about heraldry, so I'll only mention 2 rules from it that can profitably be applied to flags. The first is the rule from English heraldry that metal shouldn't be put on metal or color on color, the metals being yellow and white and the colors being everything else. The reason for this rule is that from a distance it's hard to see metal on metal or color on color designs. You can see how this would apply to flags, which by their nature have to be able to be recognized from a distance. Because of this, the flag of Albania, which is a great design up close, like on the side of a vehicle, is not so successful as a flag. This rule applies only to things put on a background, not to colors placed next to each other. Most tricolors, like Germany's flag, don't break the rule then. But what do you do if you want to put a color on a color, say a blue cross on a red field? The solution is easy. Edge the cross with a metal, such as white, to separate the colors, and you end up with the flag of Norway. Again, this is a rule in English heraldry and can't be applied strictly to flags from other countries. However, because flags have to be identifiable from a distance, it's a good idea, and it makes sense to keep it in mind when judging the quality of a flag. The second rule is that the points of honor in a flag are to the right and to the top. When I say right, I mean the flag's right, so it is on the left for someone looking at it. Because of these rules, most flags of the canton placed in the upper right. This is also likely the reason why the cross in the Scandinavian's flag are shifted to the hoist side. This rule has a psychological and social reason. It's just a widespread custom to favor up and right. There's also a practical reason for it. Flags that are in long use get frayed at their tips and lose fabric there. An element in the center will effectively get moved towards the fly end of the flag when this happens, making it look like it's about to fall off. Starting out with the design shifted to the hoist minimizes this problem. Another thing about the connection between flags and heraldry that should be mentioned is that a flag and a coat of arms are different ways of representing the same thing, and it is therefore a bad idea to put a coat of arms or a seal on a flag. Better to turn the arms into a flag. This rule is commonly violated by Central and South American countries. As you can see, this violates the simplicity rule as well, and makes the flag difficult to make and distinguish at a distance. Thus, the flag of El Salvador differs from that of Honduras only by having a seal instead of stars on its central stripe. This rule is especially violated by many U.S. state flags, which are blue with a state seal. This also violates the rule of both distinctiveness and distinguishability. From a distance, it's almost impossible to tell them apart, and completely so when they are hanging limp. Remember how I said that flags and coats of arms are the same thing in different media? Instead of putting the shield or seal on a flag, the flag should be the seal or coat of arms itself. Maryland got this right. Massachusetts should have followed his example by using a blue field with a gold Indian. And how much more beautiful would the Connecticut flag be if it were white with the grapevines? If you live in either state, maybe you could start a petition to change the flags. Keeping these principles in mind, we can look at world flags and see how they stand up. Remember that these are principles, not laws, and a flag could break them and still be good, or follow them and still be bad. For the most part, though, they hold up. So here are my lists of bad and good world flags. First, 5 bad flags and the reason why they're bad, then 10 good ones and why they're good. I'm going to remove the American flag from consideration because I might be biased. I do think it's a good flag though. It's historically meaningful and its stripes look good when they're moving in the wind. Its disadvantages are that the large number of stars are hard to distinguish from a distance and that there are other flags such as Liberia and Malaysia that are similar. However, the US flag is older than either of those, and the Liberian flag is based on the US flag anyway, so the US flag can hardly be faulted for that. The lists aren't in any order except for the number 1 spot. To start off the bad flags, here's an honorable mention, the old flag of Rwanda. It's disqualified from the main competition because it's obsolete now, but it was truly awful. Because it was the same flag as that of Guinea, they just put their country's initial on it. Really, Rwanda? Your new flag is so much better. The flag of Turkmenistan is surprisingly on the worst flag list. It's beautiful, striking, and meaningful. A good flag has to be more than that, though. It has to succeed as a flag. This flag is overly complicated. It's almost impossible to make, and its most striking feature, the carpet in the hoist, is unrecognizable from a distance. The map on the flag of Cyprus earns it its place on this list. It causes all the problems of maps on flags. It shows rather than represents. From a distance, it looks like a blob. It's hard to make, and it means that the reverse side is backwards. Even more, the gold map on the white flag violates the rule against using metal on metal. And the fact that the flag is mainly white means that when there is no wind, it will look like an all-white flag, which of course has its own meaning. The designers of the Central African Republic's flag meant well. They wanted to show the historical connection with France while including the Pan-African colors of red, yellow, and green. Unfortunately, they did it in an awkward way, including both horizontal lines and a vertical one. Just to top things off, they tacked on a star. It might have been better to put the vertical bar in the hoist rather than the middle with the star on it. It would still not have been a great flag, but not a bad one either. Albania's flag makes many best flag lists, but I have to put it with the bad flags. It's static, and worse still, its color-on-color design, particularly with the 2 colors used, make it difficult to identify from a distance. And the number 1 bad flag is Grenada. Its colors are jarring, and worst of all, it has too many design elements. It looks as if it was designed by a committee, each of the members of which had ideas they wanted included, with a compromise that all of them would be. Now for the list of good flags. It is twice as many as the bad flag list in recognition of the fact that most national flags are pretty good. Others could make a list like this, but I had to limit it to the 10 I thought best. This list also has an honorable mention for an obsolete flag, the old flag of Georgia. The particular shade of red is unique, making it instantly recognizable, and the use of a bicolor canton is original and striking. It's a shame it was changed. Any of the Scandinavian flags could have made the list, so I've chosen the oldest, that of Denmark, to represent them all. They are bold, simple, and distinctive, while still possessing enough similarities to identify them as coming from the same geographical reason. The fact that the cross is off-center gives them a sense of motion and saves them from the fault of being static. The flag of Kiribati, while a little complicated, is distinctive, symbolic, and memorable. It may well be the prettiest national flag. It is certainly so striking as to be instantly identifiable. The sun rising from the sea and the water bird makes sense for an island nation. The blue and white stripes look very good in the wind, with their waviness adding to the motion. Even when the flag is used flat, they indicate motion. The flag of Macedonia has good colors and a striking and simple design. It moves not toward one edge, but out from the center. The Maltese flag is interesting for its history. The colors are very old, giving it historical meaning. It passes the child drawing test easily. What puts it over the top is what is in the Canton area. This is the Cross of St. George, awarded by King George VI in recognition for the bravery and service of the Maltese in World War II. Using the flag to display the medal is a great way for the country to, in effect, wear it. The trident on the flag of Barbados is striking and unique, as well as very appropriate for an island nation. I first ran across it in 1967 at the Expo 67 World's Fair in Montreal. I took a black and white photo of it and was easily able to identify it later, which testifies to its distinctiveness. Although it is somewhat static, the Canadian flag has a large identifying feature, the maple leaf, which allows for instant identification. This leaf is historically meaningful as well as referring to the environment of the country and makes for a striking element in non-flag contexts. The shade of red used is unique and might even be called cheerful. The flag of Timor-Leste is bold and simple. Its hoist triangle makes it appear to be moving even when it is portrayed flat on the page. The flag of Guiana shares the same qualities. The narrow borders of the red and yellow sections make them stand out, increasing both its distinguishability and its aesthetic value. My personal favorite flag is Nauru's, which is a successful map design. This is because instead of a drawing of the outline of the country, it depicts the country's geographical location, just south of the equator and to the west of the international dateline. Its creativity makes it symbolic, distinctive, and distinguishable. And now the winner of the best flag title is Nepal. It belongs on any best flag list just for sheer coolness. It originates from the use of triangular pendants and has the shape of two of them. Put together like that, they also remind us of the Himalayan mountains. It's instantly identifiable from a distance, unique, and can easily be drawn. It fulfills all the requirements of a good flag, and it does that very well. Those are my lists then. I hope I've made it clear why I chose them, and that it's possible to judge flags relatively objectively on their success as flags. And I hope that if you ever get the chance to design a flag, you will keep these principles and examples in mind. The world can always use more good flags.